inevitably, we have to talk about Harry and Meghan. Of course we do. We had the second batch of their documentary dropped on Netflix this week. The big story in it seems to be that they basically had big fights with their family. Imagine that ever happening in any family before. I feel, Susie, am I being unreasonable here? I feel I've learned nothing and been shocked by nothing. And yet, as a result, that sort of makes it okay. And I'm not quite sure everyone's making such a fuss about it. Is that fair?
I'm the exact same, Hugo. I just think, yeah, two brothers have a fight. The monarchy tries to protect the institution of monarchy. Harry wasn't willing to play ball. He resents the media, and I think we can all understand why he resents the media, which he explains in the first couple of episodes. And then obviously, I'm old enough to remember that young lad walking behind his mother's coffin, so I completely understand why he resents the media. I think the relationship between the palace and the media has been exposed, and if you weren't aware of that relationship, you've been living under a rock. It's just a family that's, a bit bigger than most families, with different courts that all have different agendas who are not getting on. But I do think the way that Meghan was treated in this country was quite abhorrent, to be honest. But yeah.
See, that's kind of... So look, talking about the palace and the media is the bit that interests me. Janice Turner, in our column last week, she made this observation that there are two kinds of celebrities who hate the press. And one is the sort of celebrity who wants no public profile beyond the work they do and resents anything at all. And the other is somebody who's sort of genuinely baffled why the press isn't their phoning public relations department all the time. And she made the point that Harry is the first of those things and the Meghan is the second of those things, which I thought was really kind of insightful. But the idea of the relationship between the palace and the media generally, it's like, I've been a journalist for many, many years. I was a gossip columnist for a while. We didn't really have a relationship with the palace. And to the extent that we did, they were just one of the more annoying branches of celebrity public relations we dealt with. This whole idea of sort of deals and, protecting people and all that kind of stuff. I guess it happens on the fringes, but it doesn't penetrate very far. So you worked with me on a gossip column, indeed. That's fair, right?
I wouldn't even have been able, if it sounds like one of those tasks you would have set me out of sheer sadism, like find out who the press officer is. I wouldn't, of course not. I watched some of this documentary. Oh my God, what a snore fest those two are to me. And the Harry's, it's understandable, obviously, with his mother. But I think it tips into paranoia, the way he talks about the media. This kind of ultra connected. The media is not organized enough to be as ultra connected as he says, and it also does have some other agendas. So it's interesting that I'm getting some, Susie's sympathetic. I just find the pair of them almost there's a sort of ironic undertow, which is that especially in Meghan's case, this is though the obsession with the media is actually, what would they be without the media either being horrendous or good? They refer constantly to their story, but they've created their story out of indignation at the media. The media, it's a sort of chicken, but they don't seem aware at all of that. You just think, well, without the media, like you have your product is purely a narrative that has evolved out of a sort of rage at the media, out of this victim status that you've created.
Susie, look, Zoe and I obviously, in media terms, sit on one very clear side of the fence here, and I'm open to the possibility that we just sort of can't see the wood for the trees. But when the idea that Meghan particularly was treated sort of appallingly by the media, it's like, I can see where she's coming from, but I remember an awful lot of quite phoning coverage. I remember writing some quite phoning coverage.
Yeah, I did too.
And when she first started complaining about her treatment at the hands of the media, maybe this is hopelessly naive of me, I genuinely couldn't really figure out what she was talking about because it seemed to be pretty similar to the way the media covers everything. But is that just because I'm sort of numb and brutalised, do you think, Susie?
Yeah, also, I remember growing up and it was the whole, Squidgegate and toe sucking, and there was all sorts going on. Between Charles, Diana, Andrew, Fergie, and there was lots of stuff being put into the media. And I do think there probably is a bit within the palace where they're like, listen, this is it. They pay.
Yeah.
You get your picture taken and they will try and get gossip and stuff on you. And, look, we're all old enough to remember Diana and the press intrusion there, but we're also old enough to remember that there was quite a lot that Diana actually courted of the press, especially that post-divorce time when she had no security and stuff like that. So, I mean, straight off the bat, let's just clarify. I'm not a royalist or a monarchist. I know that'll be a deep shock to you both. But yeah, I mean, I'm just like, it's just a family that don't get on, and there's an institution around it, and they're trying to protect, Charles and William are trying to do their thing where they have to protect the institution, as is the court. And they two are like, we need to make a couple of shekels, and this is kind of what happened. I had a fight with my brother.
What is interesting though is that every time I write about Harry and Meghan, so I like you, Hugo, at the beginning was basically on. Well, it was. The mood was that you were pro.
Delightful.
Everyone was pro Meghan.
It was a new
like
Britain.
fantastic.
It was wonderful. Yeah,
great. Everyone loves it. And I even would speak to sort of people that you might think would sort of wrinkle their noses at having a diverse. No, everyone was pro. But every time I write about it now in any kind of negative light, this is the one topic where I get proper abuse. I mean, from Americans. So there's a real sense that Meghan is a kind of hero in the anti-racist battle against the man, who is now suddenly the British monarchy. Obviously we've had the Lady Susan thing recently.
Well, it doesn't derail that narrative too much, does it? Yeah.
It's sort of amusing. I personally find it kind of not quite as quite not as much of a demon as perhaps she's made out. But it is clearly, for all that, Meghan is at the point now of really irking most well-meaning members of British monarchists, as I know from the queue, by the way, to see the Queen. There was one thing that got these nice old ladies enraged, and it was Meghan.
Really?
But equally, there's one thing that gets many, many, many American culture warriors, or social justice warriors, I should say, enraged, and that is any critique of Meghan. So she is successfully positioning herself as a kind of a kind of talisman.
Yeah,
I
don't think there's anything wrong with what they're doing. They're fine. I mean, they're finding their path. But their path is not that different from the old path. It's just happening somewhere else with slightly different language.
And a giant garden.
Also, though, women coming into the royal family have always, like Wallace Simpson, vilified, Diana, vilified, Fergie, vilified. Like, there is a bit of a theme there. Let's not dance around that. There's 100% a theme there, because there are people in this country who are weirdly obsessed with the royal family. And we've seen that. And listen, if you want to queue and walk past a coffin, absolutely fine. That's quite a respectful thing to do. But to go out and watch a funeral procession or cortege and film it in your phone when you're saying that you're paying your deepest respects to the royal family tells me there's something quite odd about people's relationships with the royal family in this country. And that's fine. That's up to them. But let's not dance around the issue that Meghan's the first woman to be vilified, because she's not, because it has happened over a course of time.
I mean, not just women. I often feel that the most vicious thing that's ever happened to any royal was Prince Charles when his phone conversations were leaked, all the tampon stuff. I mean, that's like, who comes back from that? And yet there he is, sort of being king. So there's an extraordinary resilience in the monarchy that you kind of think that I don't know, but I think maybe, as I said, maybe it does just sort of brutalize us, and it makes us think that they can put up with anything. And then you get somebody new coming in, going like, "Hang on, I didn't sign up for this."
But then equally, it's a bit tricky to be like, "Oh, get the violins out." So awful being a princess and being in the royals. That is a tricky one to play. Like, oh, the Windsor. I mean, it's so awful. When she's doing testimony from a private jet with a dog sitting on the floor of the jet, it is a tricky position to get right.
I'd marry him and go and live in California in a heartbeat.